Welcome to The Growth Equation. This isn't your typical business podcast. We're keeping it real about the challenges of scaling up, period. I'm Tristan Wright and I've been there. I've built and scaled my own business. I've sold it. I've learned a ton along the way. Now I'm bringing you the no BS stories of founders who are in the trenches right now, navigating that messy middle. We're talking advertising, marketing, design, creative, branding, the whole 9 yards. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur or running a team of 100. Everyone's got a secret sauce, that thing that makes them different, better. We're going to uncover it. So grab a coffee and let's get real. Today we're talking to Richard from Tailored SEO. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tristan.
My pleasure. I've been looking forward to having a chat with you. It's a time of recording. It's first thing Monday morning, probably the first thing that we've been doing, that we've done for the week. And as soon as I logged in, I said, mate, what's going on with the background noise? And you said, I'm surprised that we've got the background noise. You've been playing with everything for half an hour.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like just trying to get everything set up. So I kicked all my staff out of the office today so we could do this podcast, and came in early so I could just finalize all the audio and just make sure everything was like fine tuned. Everything was sounding fine on my end. I had a meeting with a videographer before this as well. Like everything's fine. So yeah, it sounds great on my end. And then you came in like, what's that noise? I'm like, oh, the noise gate's not working with the heat pump.
Yeah. So like as much as we're prepared for tech, there's always going to be an error. So that's why we jump on a couple of minutes early and make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So Richard, tell me a bit about your business. So how did you get into Tailored SEO?
So I finished high school and didn't quite know what I wanted to do at the time. I think the original plan was I was playing in a few bands at the time. So I was like, I'm going to be a rock star and make it really big. And then realized that when you've got 4 or 5, 17, 18-year-olds who don't have any work ethic behind that doesn't sort of work too well. So I ended up going to university, doing a Bachelor of Business. And at the time, I was really into the Gruen transfer and I was into Mad Men, as most people doing a business degree at that time, I think, were probably similar situations. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go into advertising and I'm going to be this guy that wears suits and does these cool meetings. And while I was studying, I came across digital marketing. And I was like, oh, I'll learn a bit about this because obviously, it wasn't that new, but it was still relatively new. So I started doing that. And then I had a friend of mine who was a videographer and I helped him build a website. We were doing some SEO on that while I was studying. Finished my degree and was continuing on with that and then just kind of continued on with it. So I think I started SEO about 2008, 2009. And then...
So you've never had a real job, like out of uni?
No, so when I was at university, I was still doing a few things. So I was doing SEO on the side for a few friends, but at the same time, I was working as a bartender at one point for a restaurant that was down the road from me. And then I was also working as a disability support worker for about 2-3 years while I was studying, which was great because when you're doing the overnight shifts, once all your clients are in bed and everything else, they gave me a few hours to study before I could do anything else. And it was good money at the time, especially as a 19-year-old. But always just kind of did SEO, which was never meant to be the full-time option. Once again, I was going to go into advertising and then just kept sticking with it. And then, it's pretty much been doing it ever since.
So out of uni, you basically went straight into running your own show kind of thing.
No, so when I came out of uni, I then started working for a number of different agencies. So I was working with a small development agency in Brendale, Queensland they were called Fireworks Websites. I was one of 2 people doing SEO. So I did that for a few years and then I moved to a company called Resolution Media, which was quite a large agency based in Brisbane. And then I went to a company called Search Factory, which at the time I think was probably the largest and biggest digital marketing agency in Brisbane at the time. And then I went in-house for a while and that was fine. I did that for about 4 or 5 years and then realized that in-house digital marketing wasn't quite for me. Like, while it was good having the consistency, I liked being able to work on, multiple different clients and have, different strategies, different industries, speak to different people. And at the same time, I had moved down from Brisbane to Tasmania, where I currently live now.
Why would you go from Brisbane to Tassie? Warm weather to cold weather.
So when I was working in-house for this company, their head office was based in Hobart. So they kind of gave me the ultimatum of move down to head office or we'll make your role redundant. And I was sort of like, well, you know what, let's do Hobart for a year or two. We'll see how it goes, and I'll move back to Brisbane. That was 8 years ago now. So obviously it wasn't just a 2-year thing.
Mm.
And then while I was doing all this, I'd started Tailored SEO as a little side hustle. Primarily, it was just a way to have a few small clients. And back then, I think I was charging like $100 or $200 a month for 10 hours of SEO.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was just a way to get my foot in the door and get a bit of extra money to save up for a house deposit. Like, it was never meant to be this big thing. And then when I moved down to Hobart, I realized that there weren't a lot of agencies down here, a lot of people doing SEO. While I was working with this other company, I then spent a lot of time going to networking events and speaking to a lot of other businesses, sort of teaching them about SEO and websites and the importance of all that. And then slowly started getting a few more clients from there, started doing some subcontracting work with a company called The Creative Collective, who I think you actually interviewed fairly recently.
Yeah.
I think you interviewed a vet. Yeah. So I started doing that. And then I got to the point where I was working full-time for a development agency and then working full-time at night with Tailored SEO. I went, you know what, if I don't do anything, if I just pay my bills and I stay at home and I just work on this nonstop, I could probably do this full-time. So I left my other job and got everything ready to start doing Tailored SEO full-time. And then 3 weeks later, COVID hit Australia. And I'm sitting there going, okay, this is going to be like the smallest amount of time that a business has been in operation ever. Because obviously the few clients that I did have went into lockdown and everything else. But we actually managed to grow quite well, especially in the Hobart, Tasmania market. And then we sort of just kept going. And I went to a conference in UTAS. Sorry, it wasn't a conference. I was doing a speech on something. And I was speaking to a few of the students that were studying their business degree. And I was sort of going, oh, well, what are you planning on doing after you finish your degree? And a lot of them were saying, oh, we're going to move to Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane and try and get a marketing job. And after a few people had said this, I went, oh, why are you all planning on leaving Tasmania? Like, you like being here. And the main consensus was people were saying, well, there's no marketing jobs down here. If we want something, we've got to go to, the bigger cities. And I remember going home and, sitting there and I was like, well, what can I do to try and help this situation out? So then started really working on Tailored SEO so that way I could go from a sole trader to a company and actually try and employ some people down here to try and make it easier for people to find marketing jobs down here. So I took the business full-time start of 2020, just as one person. And now we have 7 people down here in Hobart, and then we've got 2 people based up in Brisbane.
Yeah, nice. So you've had, let's say, almost 2 people a year you've added.
Pretty much. So I think in January this year, we went from 5. So from January to February, we went from 5 people to 9 people in the space of 5 weeks because we just kept getting new inquiries, and then we're bringing on people that had separate skill sets. So we're like, okay, well, let's incorporate that into the business. So this year alone, we started doing a lot more with social media advertising and organic social media, and then we also started doing videography and photography as a service. Whereas,
do you need to rebrand?
Sorry,
do you need to rebrand almost?
We actually are in the process of that because that's the one thing I found. So we had 2 situations in December where we'd signed on 2 new clients for SEO. And then while we're talking to them during the onboarding process, they were talking about how they were getting another agency to do their social media. And I said, well, we actually did the social media stuff as well. And both of these clients went, yeah, but your name is Tailored SEO. We thought you just did SEO. And I was like, no, we actually do everything. We do everything except for website hosting now. And so we actually are in the process of doing a full rebrand, new website, new business. But as you can imagine, that takes time. And then, we've got clients we've got to manage. So trying to find the time for all of us to sit down and go, okay, well, how do we actually move forward with all this? So I think we're hoping by the end of December, we should have the full rebrand done and ready to go.
Yeah, nice. So it's been a progressive journey. So you've worked for a few years for others. So then you, just prior to COVID, you set up your own business, almost out of business straight away, and here we are today. What was it like onboarding 4 people in 5 weeks?
It was very stressful, to say the least. Once again, the thing with Tassie is we don't have the same advantages as Melbourne or Sydney or the rest of Australia, where you have a lot of skilled and talented staff in digital, because once again, a lot of people will, move to Melbourne or Sydney for those jobs. So there is a bit of a skill shortage down here of finding the right staff. So what we tend to do, and the one thing I think we did well with the business, was we accepted the fact that it's going to be hard for us to be able to onboard people that have already got those skill sets to a high level. So what we did is we created essentially a 3-month intensive training course on our services. So that way, when we look at hiring people, we're hiring them more so for their personality, their attitude, their passion, more so than the skill sets. Because you can train people in digital marketing, but it's hard to, train people to, behave a certain way, act a certain way.
Being a good person.
Exactly. So I think that's one thing that does set us apart, is the way that we set up our training is done in a way that within 3 to 6 months, we can essentially take someone from being very green in the industry to being pretty much self-sufficient the whole time.
Yeah. I love it, because not many businesses do this well. So it's basically a proper onboarding process, but so many businesses don't do it. They just say, hey, here's your job role, here's your position description, sink or swim.
Yeah, and look, at the start, we kind of did do that. So I remember my first and second staff members, they both sort of come out of university. They're both really passionate about what they want to do. They kind of done a little bit of SEO, but more so in what they'd heard from a university course, but they didn't have the necessary skill set. And it was very much, they came on and went, okay, here's the basics. And it might have been a 1 week sort of sit down with me going through everything. And then after that, it was like, okay, here's 15 clients, off you go. If you have questions, that's fine, but these are now your clients. And it worked. Those 2 staff members are really good at what they do now. But when we got to the point this year where we had to onboard 5 people, we're like, okay, we need probably a bit of a better system for this. Like the sink or swim, once again, works for some people, but doesn't work well for others as well.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, there's no checks and balances in place, and you've got no control over the output. So what does that 3-month program look like? And have you got it just for specific roles, or is it business-wide?
So with the onboarding, so the first few days is usually going through our mission statement, our core values, going through the actual business itself, what we're doing, why we're doing certain things. So that will be a combination of still learning the basics of SEO, but also going through our processes and systems and just sort of explaining why they exist. A good example of this is, say, time tracking. So I remember when I was a employee for other agencies and you had to track your time, you always hated it. And you can never understand why, but it was always this thing. And then going as, moving from someone that does digital marketing to an owner of a digital marketing agency, you kind of understand this is actually why you need time tracking, because you need it to check capacity levels. You need to make sure that clients' tasks are doing well, for looking for inefficiencies and a lot of different things. So when we go through those things, it's a matter of going, well, we do this, but this is why it's actually important. So that way our staff actually understand why. Then after that, we have, for the SEO, it's about a 2-month course just on SEO, and we break down everything. So I'll actually sit down with the staff members myself and we go through everything. We've got SOPs, we've got video recordings of everything we do. And then we do, little quizzes here and there. They'll take on a few clients that I'll work alongside with them. So that way, if they get stuck on anything, they'll be fine. And then if they need extra training and other resources, then I can always lean on other people I've worked with over the years that can come in and do extra training resources for them as well. So the whole point is that by the end of that first sort of 3 months, they should be relatively skilled to do everything up to about 90%. And then anything that they're stuck on, we've got those procedures in place, or we've got 5 other people here in our office that are also skilled in that they can lean on as well.
Exactly. Now, the last couple of years, SEO's probably changed a tiny bit with AI, especially now that the AI engines have got search in them as well. So, and the popularization of automation too. So I want to hear your take on SEO, AI, automation, and how that's changing the industry.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that AI has actually been around for a lot longer than most people think, right? So by the time that the general users or people hear about something like ChatGPT, OpenAI, it's already been around for probably 7 to 10 years prior to that. So in terms of the SEO, yes, we are seeing a bit of a shift. We are seeing that click-through rates are dropping. You think back to SEO even so 4 or 5 years ago where you could rank number 1 in organic and you get more traffic, you get more leads and sales. If you actually look at it these days, by the time you get to the first position organically, you're actually already halfway down the search engine. By the time you take into consideration the ads, the AI overviews, the map listings, the people also search for, then you get to organic. What we've been finding is that SEO is still important, but what I think will change is that SEO will be a little bit less important than it is currently, because the way that systems like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity work, they're working more on brand awareness. So they're looking at other factors like reviews, unique selling points, external mentions, the quality of content itself. Whereas, things like SEO in a stricter sense, they're looking mainly at a page level or domain level. So they're looking at, does this page have a better user experience or content compared to these other 6 or 10 competitors? Whereas AI is looking more at brand awareness and brand growth. So what I think will happen in the next year or two is the whole point of SEO will be different. It will still be important, but I think a lot of agencies will need to focus more on other services as well. And instead of just having people come through and saying, okay, we just want to do SEO, it's going to be more of a multi-channel approach, and we actually move more to brand awareness and like full service digital marketing, because you want to be able to make sure that you can still access people via social media, via email marketing, via photography and videography, especially as search engines are cracking down on things like AI content and AI imagery. It's going to be a lot more based on user experience. So having things like videos, which have always been important, but it will be one of those things that when you've got companies that are using just a few more of those services for remarketing purposes or for brand awareness, they're going to see a lot better results than agencies or clients, that will just be using things like SEO or just Google Ads.
Yeah, totally agree. Like a while ago, it was getting lots and lots of backlinks via articles, and then that went away. But it's almost in a roundabout sort of way, it's coming back, but just not necessarily getting backlinks to articles. It's getting mentions and awareness from multiple different areas.
It's actually funny you say that. So I read an article this morning at home before I came into work. I think it was from Search Engine Journal, and they were talking about the decline of the importance of backlinks. So when I started in SEO, it was very much a Wild West scenario, right? You would keyword stuff, your keywords into every page as many times as you could. You would build all these backlinks or Web 2.0s and then tiered link building, because at the time, backlinks were the be-all and end-all. The way that Google and search engine optimization has moved these days is it's a combination of obviously optimizing a website for Google, but optimizing for the user experience, because Google's understands that if the user experience isn't good, people are going to come onto that page, they're going to have a bad time, they're just going to leave. And then Google will go, well, what's the purpose of putting you number 1 if people actually don't like what the page looks like? So Google's tending to look more at those signals more so than backlinks. Now, they can still be important if you can get good backlinks, but the whole premise of, sitting there and spending 20 hours a month, just building backlinks or buying backlinks or link exchanging or things like that, they've been becoming less and less important over the years. And I think especially with things like the AI systems, there will still be a need for it, but at a trust level, not at a, let's just build 100 backlinks to a website, we're magically going to be number one.
Yeah. Like it's a different purpose. So like the top of the search engine, the people also ask tough stuff, those questions. It's where you've been mentioned and your opinion has been communicated elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be one of those things that, especially with what I'm seeing at the moment is a lot of companies or other people, advertising AIO as a service, so AI SEO.
Yes.
And it'll be interesting because every large language model at the moment is slightly different. So when we talk about SEO, we always say, well, we'll optimize you for search engines. And what most agencies say, well, what they mean, is they'll optimize for Google, because unless you've got a client that's very specifically has traffic coming from Bing, like a lot of it, so think, healthcare, government sort of thing, most people will just optimize for Google. But if you've got, multiple AI systems or large language models like, Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT, and they all run off different services, well, then which one do you optimize for?
Exactly.
But I did a training session with my staff last week, I think, and we were talking about this. And I think the one thing to take into consideration is that SEO is always going to be important, because at the moment, all these large language models, they're still getting all their information and data from search engines. So John Bueller, who's the head of Google's web safety and spam team, I think also did a presentation last week as well, pretty much said, as long as there are websites, there'll always be a need for SEO. But what SEO is will shift over the next year or two.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that's where AI gets all of its information and it learns from. And there's a thing at the moment saying that AI is learning how to write from all these poorly written articles that have been SEO spam backlink type.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So I'm actually about to do an SEO experiment. So, because one thing we hear in our industry is don't use AI content. Google hates AI content. And that's what we tell our clients as well. But then Google also came out and said, well, it's not that we dislike or will penalize AI content. We're more so looking at high value versus low value content. So Google's kind of said you can use AI as long as it's actually high value. So what I'm about to start doing is I'm running an experiment where I've started a whole new website, new domain name for a fake business that I've just chosen a niche for. And the experiment's going to be on having the entire website using AI content that's been humanized enough, but then you still go in, you add your anecdotes or a few little things afterwards. So it's no longer AI content, but it originally started as 100% AI content, and then testing how search engines assess and then rank that content.
Interesting.
Because at the end of the day, the way that we learn about what works and what doesn't work for SEO is when you've got these people that actually run experiments and figure out what works and what doesn't. So I ran an experiment a year ago where I wanted to see how Google would treat exact match keywords in a domain, because Google always says that having an exact match domain isn't that effective. But then in the real world, when you look at it, you go, well, actually, these exact match domains rank very well. But I also wanted to test the effectiveness of top-level domains. So I think I created a website called SEOperth.services. And the whole purpose was SEO Perth would be the exact match keyword in the domain, but then the TLD of .services would also match the exact match as well. And I just wanted to see how that would affect things. And so I did that. We wrote a few pages. That was all 100% human content. We built the basic level link building for about a month. And we just let it do its own thing. And after, I think it was about 8 weeks, we ranked number 1 for SEO Perth services. We ranked number 3 for SEO Perth. And it's like, okay, so what Google says and then what we actually found are two very different things.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Did you have your contact form linked back to the main page? So were you actually getting leads off that as well?
So funnily enough, we got about 3 inquiries, and it was really awkward because then I had to call them back and I said, "Hey, look, thank you for sending this inquiry through. This is actually an experimental website. However, I am from this company. We do still do SEO, but..." And they're like, "Oh, okay," because we'd never heard of you before, but all of a sudden you were doing really well. Um, I think the next experiment I'm running is I think we decided on business coaching, which is nothing I don't know too much about apart from things like automations and a few things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And, all of a sudden we get a few inquiries asking us for some business coaching.
Feel free to push those links through the inquiries through me. So businesscoaching.services. So yeah.
Pretty much.
I want to, yeah, I'd be really interested to hear how that goes, those experiments go. So
yeah, I think it'd be one of those things that once we finish doing it, I think we'll run it for about 3 to 6 months. And then based on that, depending on the results, we'll either go, well, that didn't work, and then no one ever sees, it'll never see the light of day. Or, if we have some interesting insights into that, we'll probably actually do an article about it in a video, do the standard things, do some marketing with it, push it to LinkedIn. Because, it's one of those things that if you keep doing just like the substandard, things that every SEO person says, like, write good content, do good internal linking, make sure your heading hierarchy is good, write engaging meta titles and descriptions, like, you'll get results, but it'll only get you so far. And then you get to sort of that technical level of SEO. And that's where, the real magic happens, especially if you're in an industry where all your competitors are obviously very heavily invested in digital marketing as well.
Exactly. I want to change topic for a minute. So I want to go back. I want to go to the personal side of things. So 5 years ago, you set up the business and 0 people, just yourself. Now you're at 9. What's it been like as the founder for you on that journey?
Terrifying, to be honest. One thing I learned fairly early on is it's one thing to be good at what you do. It's another thing to start a business about something that you're good at doing. Having to learn, accounting, legal, onboarding, systems and processes was something I never really thought about too much. I was like, we'll just keep doing SEO, and then when we get more clients, I might bring on someone. And, you sort of hit that point where you go, actually, no, I have to really focus on more of the business sides, the standards, procedures, the training, and all that sort of stuff. And it was a real eye opener. And it's been a very steep learning curve, and I'm still very much learning. Like, my staff, I'm not perfect. My staff know I'm not perfect sometimes, but I think it still gives us the advantage where I'm still very much on a personal level with my clients and my staff as well. So it's not like I'm sitting here coming in and talking about KPIs and everything all the time and, stressing all these importances of things. But, going from never having to worry about the accounting side to then having to do things like BAS. And, and I got caught in a pretty bad situation when I first started out, where I knew what BAS was. I never knew how to do BAS. And then, so I hired an accounting firm to do all that for me. And they obviously knew I was new to to business, and they charged me an exorbitant amount to do my BAS every quarter. And it wasn't until like a year and a half later, I was talking to another business owner, and he went, that's ridiculous. Like, if you pay another accountant, that should be like, $200 at most. And I was paying this other accounting firm like $1,500 because I didn't know better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Submitting the BAS is, as long as you've done all your bookkeeping, $300-$400 is.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, right? You don't know what you don't know. And this is, when we do SEO audits and strategy sessions with clients, the amount of times we'll go through certain things about the website and they go, I didn't even know that was a thing. So say, once again, link building, we'll talk about, the amount of backlinks that are pointing to them, and we'll say to them, you've got X amount of toxic backlinks or low quality backlinks, or this is happening on the website that's actually causing issues. And they're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And it's like, well, you wouldn't, because it's only one of those things I think digital marketing people, developers or things would be aware of. So, especially the last 12 months, a lot of it for me has sort of fallen into that mantra of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you don't know what you don't know. How do you go about learning and knowing?
A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of long days. You know, a lot of it was I got really big into a lot of networking events and business groups because I'm one of those people where I'm very introverted in my personal life, especially if I'm meeting other business owners or external people, unless I'm talking about SEO, because for the most part, it's all I've ever known, right? So I can talk about that for days on end. But by joining a lot of networking events, it was an eye opener because originally it was just meant to build up my self confidence for public speaking and things like that. But I then realized I got to speak with other business owners who, had probably been through things I've been through before, but they've been in business a lot longer than me. So they were able to help me grow the business or figure out what I needed to know or if I was missing certain things. And I think that was a really big game changer for me, was just actually putting myself in a room with other people that had either been through that or were going through that.
Yeah, like learning from others that have already been there or learning with others.
Yeah. And I've just recently gotten to the point now where, I think the biggest thing for small business owners is once again, like, oh, hold on, sorry. You get to a point where you still try to do everything yourself. So I still try to do my own clients. I still do all the accounting, all the HR, the legal work. I've gotten to the point now where I've realized, well, I need to focus on the business a little bit more to, help it grow. So, now I'm actually bringing in people like an actual bookkeeper to manage the book. So that way I don't have to look at things, looking at, particular resources of things that, while they might not be hard, they might take up a lot more of my time or cause me more stress and anxiety. And then going, actually, this is something I don't need to focus on this much. I could probably get someone else to work on that and delegate that work. And that's been probably one of the biggest game changers for me in the last 6 months, because now I get time to, go back and focus on doing digital marketing experiments, which I used to love to do. But, when you get busy, you're trying to do everything at once. You just don't have that time.
That's it. Like, you need to be focusing on the high value tasks. And are you the only person in the business that can do it? And if the answer is no, you look for someone else that can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is one thing you wish you knew in business 3 years ago? So if you were able to go back and tell yourself one piece of advice 3 years ago, what would that piece of advice be?
I think the biggest thing is, the one biggest piece of advice I think I'd give is, it's okay to try new things and to fail. So I remember, once again, especially when I was a sole trader and starting everything out, working 15, 20-hour days. And when things were good, they would be great. But then if anything bad slightly happened, it would almost send you into this spiral of anxiety and stress. And I've now realized that, you don't know if something's going to work until you actually try it. And sometimes things work and then sometimes things don't. But it's a matter of going, you won't know until you try it. So, we've just started doing marketing for ourselves. I'm sure you've probably spoken to other people in my space before, or you've probably heard the thing like, we spend so much time doing the marketing for our clients that we don't really do much for ourselves. And we were the exact same as well. But especially in the last 6 months, we've really been pushing to, do some more marketing ourselves, whether it's education, whether it's training, whether it's, doing paid media, because we realize that we also need to be able to show that we are good at what we do, so people can find us. So
lead by example. If you can do it for yourself, you can do it for others.
Yeah, exactly. I think, especially when you're starting out, I think a lot of business owners, they push so hard at trying to do everything themselves because it's their business that, they've got the most skin in the game. Mm-hmm. But then if anything goes wrong, especially if you're trying to juggle, multiple tasks, that it becomes quite hard. And, that's why, I think a lot of business owners, and I was probably the same, you hear this, most small businesses fail, I think, within the first 2 years or something like that.
Yep, I think, so half within the first year and like 80% within 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of people, when they're starting a business, they focus so much on that. So then they put all this, extra work and time and energy into it. And then if it is successful, that's great. But then you don't get out of that, that loop of needing to get everything done.
Yeah. You need to pull back for a second and realize, no, you don't have to do it all yourself, and let others do it, and support yourself, and actually know where you want to get to.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because if you don't have a direction, rather than you shouldn't just be in there to get through to the next year. You need to have a goal that you're working towards so you can keep chasing it.
Yeah, like, it's all well and good that you might sit there and go, every year we've been growing by 10% or 15% year on year. Like, growth is good, don't get me wrong. But, you also need to make sure you have a long-term plan for the business, but also for the business owner themselves, right? Burnout is a real thing. You can't just keep trying to, work 20-hour days, especially if you've already got staff that, can handle some of it. I was listening to an audiobook, I think a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how, as entrepreneurs or business owners, we hold ourselves to a very high standard. And if you try to delegate tasks and you got someone that doesn't do it, 100% the way you would do it, we feel like it's not good enough. But, if you can get someone that does your job internally that's 80% as good as you, that's actually really good for most other people. But as business owners, we hold ourselves in such high regard because we want to be able to do the best we can for our clients.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I always preach. Never expect your staff to be able to do it as good as you, because they may be more talented, but you're going to always care more. So you need to support them to get to close to your level.
Yeah. And look, you can try and do things to make your staff, more invested, whether it's by caring or processes or systems. But you're right. No one that you ever bring on is going to be as invested as you.
Richard, it's been a pleasure talking today. If people want to get in touch, business coaching services, Tasmania, or SEO Perth services?
I don't think the SEO Perth one exists anymore, to be fair. I think we just let that one lapse.
Too funny. So, in all seriousness, though, what's the best way for people to connect if they want to have it, get in touch with you, mate?
Yeah, the best way is just to go onto our website. It's just tailoredseo.com.au. In terms of, the SEO, we actually do a free strategy session, which we say is 1 hour. It's never an hour. It's quite a bit longer. So we actually go through and we do all the audits, and then we jump on a call and go through everything with you. Because as I said, we're big on education. So we'd much rather someone come through and go, I need help, or just a bit of an understanding, and we do all of it for you. And then you can go away just knowing what's working, what's not. Otherwise, we do quite a bit in stuff with social media. So if you just check out our Facebook, Meta or Instagram account, we do quite a bit of work on that now as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, mate.
Too easy. Thanks, Tristan.
Cheers. That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into The Growth Equation. If you've enjoyed the show, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps us big time. Catch you next time. And if you want more, head over to evolvetogrow.com.au for show notes and exclusive content.